Hello everyone, HisRoyalFatness here and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be continuing the How to Play series in the FV4202. This is where I play 3 consecutive games. I break down my thought process, why I decided to go to this position or why I decided to relocate in this instance, and hopefully this information will help you as players when playing this particular vehicle and it's time for you to make a decision. Now, in fact, instead of showing you only 3 games today, I'm going to show you 4 games because I was having a really good time with the 422, so that's always a bonus. But there is one thing I want to mention before we hop into those games, which is the HESH ammunition and why you have to be using the HESH ammunition in this vehicle. If you're not utilizing the HESH, it's a mediocre medium tank and you're not doing yourself any favors by doing that. It is what defines the 422, it's what makes the tank click, and that's what all of my replays are really going to highlight is my use of HESH, my use of positioning based on HESH, and what you can do to really maximize the amount of damage you can deal when you don't have that heat round to fall back onto if you're running against a difficult to pen target. And since it is a bit of an unusual medium tank, you're definitely going to jump into that. But first, let me show you the equipment I am running on this tank. This is what I personally like on the 422. This is what I feel comfortable with in this tank. As I say, equipment is always subjective to you as a player and what you prefer. But with that out of the way, let's jump right into the first of not 3 but 4 games today. Alright, so for this first game, we are going to be on Rockfield, and what I like to do on this map is go towards the medium side of the map and try and get some early shots off on the enemy team, and then I'll relocate if I need to. Now, if you're looking at the mini-map, you're going to see my team is in fact going the opposite direction. I didn't realize it at the time, but I am most definitely going to recognize it eventually, and I'm definitely going to need to relocate based on that. So, situational awareness is very important, and I'm going to put some headshots into this E50M. My first shot doesn't pen because I hit his tracks. That is always a risk of using HESH ammunition. Now, at this point of time, I realize my team is not in fact with me, and I know I need to relocate at this point in time because it's pretty clear the enemy team is headed to my side of the map, but I do not want to give up this flank completely. So where can I be effective? What can I do in this situation where I can still be effective on this side of the map, but not risk getting YOLO'd and dying really fast? So I'm pushing up towards the middle, and the reason I feel comfortable pushing up towards this middle section is firstly, my team is spanned out along the other side of the map. They provide very decent cover if the enemy were to YOLO me, and secondly, I already know they don't have tank destroyers in their spawn because our T-54, if you're looking at the minimap, he would have spotted them up by now, and it's pretty evident that they have pushed up fairly aggressively. So I find the 263 pushed up aggressively, and I'm just going to sit here. I'm just going to shoot HESH at his mantlet because I can't really pen him frontally with the AP rounds. As I said, with the 422, you need to remember you don't have those heat rounds to fall back onto. So the 268, though, he needed to get out of there. I was putting him in a crossfire with the tanks on my team, which means he needed to run away. I was thinking about pulling out for a moment here, but then I realized the mouse and the Jagdtiger are coming up to support me, and while the STB is getting tunneled by the enemy team, I decided to utilize that moment to start farming this AMX-50B with HESH. He is the most dangerous opponent, but now I'm going to reprioritize my targets onto this AMX-30B because he is pushing aggressively onto our Jagdtiger, and the last thing I want to do is lose this Jagdtiger. So just by putting in some HESH shots into that AMX-30B, he's already dead, just like that. So it was a pretty straightforward game, and we are going to definitely win this, especially with our mouse being very aggressive. I'm not going to push with the mouse because that's going to put me in front of the whole team. I'm just going to pull around behind them. But what I wanted to highlight about this battle was being situationally aware of when it's time to relocate. Like, in that situation, I knew the enemy team would push up on me, right? If I hadn't pulled out towards the middle of the map where I'd have cover from my teammates and I wasn't the direct recipient of a YOLO, I would have died very quickly there because people will prioritize me. Firstly, because I have a decent reputation on NA as an okay player, so people generally prefer to tunnel me in those situations. And secondly, the 422 is a pretty easy to kill tank. If I just stayed there, I would have died. The STB, who knows, he might have escaped, but in that situation, it is all man for himself, and I managed to stay alive there just by relocating. And that's what you need to do in the 422, is you need to avoid those situations where you're going to be aggressively pushed on, right? It is a good tank for 1 versus 1 brawling if you're facing like a lightly armored tank where you can use that HESH. You have over 4,000 DPM. But the moment you find yourself in a situation where you might get pushed on by 2-3 tanks and you have little team support, you need to relocate, and you need to be good at knowing that when you're playing the 422, or you're going to have a lot of bad games by not really realizing that. Now, this game was really fast, over 5,000 damage, just because I was able to utilize the HESH and position myself according to how my team was playing and where I could be most effective. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into the second battle, which is Oasis Palms. Now, I'm going left with the mediums. We have a very strong medium team, so I don't mind going towards the dunes. Now, there's something you need to know about the FV4202. That is, you have amazing gun depression of 10 degrees, but you also have an absolutely abysmal turret, and its armor is not effective at all. So even though you have great gun depression, you really can't utilize that turret armor most of the time. So how can you still work in hilly terrain even though you have a poor turret? And the best thing you can do is have teammates in front of you that will distract the enemy. And then as soon as the enemy fire, you pull up and put a shot in. It's all about letting your teammates take the shot and then pushing forward and doing the damage. So in this instance, I have an AMX-30B and a T-22 who's going to be right in front of me. He's going to distract the priority of the enemy's attention. Now, this chieftain in front of me, he's going to learn really quickly why it's not a good idea to sit in front of an FV4202 that is using HESH. He has a very weak lower plate, and I'm just going to wait for him to get distracted with my team and start farming him with HESH, right? And this is a perfect scenario for the 4202. You're not being prioritized, you're still on the front line, but you're waiting for the enemy to get distracted, and you're using that HESH. Now, if you didn't know this, you can actually pen the Chieftain Mark 6 through the hatch if you hit the HESH directly into the middle of the hatch. It is something I like to do because when you shoot AP, there's always that chance you're not going to hit, so even if you don't hit the HESH straight into the hatch, you're still going to splash damage onto the turret. Now, this Chieftain Mark 6 is dead. I mean, I'm going to take him out like that. And just really fast, the DPM you have with the HESH ammunition is crazy. And if I wasn't using the HESH there, I would not have killed the Chieftain. He still would have been maybe on 400 HP in this situation. And it's just that difference is why I think the HESH is an amazing ammunition type. Now, I'm going to start prioritizing this Progetto 65. I do know they have a Leopard in the town. And the reason I know that is he shot me in the side of the turret earlier in the game, which means he is somewhere in the town or he could be an enemy spawn. So I'm going to prioritize the Progetto because firstly, I can HESH him, and secondly, I don't want to deal with an E100 who has hard cover. I'd rather use my DPM more efficiently on this flank. Now, the reason I didn't push onto this Progetto immediately is because I wasn't sure where that Leopard 1 was, right? The Leopard 1 could have been deeper in our spawn, in which case, if I'd pushed on the Progetto earlier, I may have put myself in a crossfire. But now it's pretty evident to me that this Progetto 65 is alone, which means I can push onto him and start really dealing the damage to him with HESH ammunition, and he's already a one-shot just like that with the HESH. It's just so crazy how fast you can take a tank down, and that game is over really fast. The Leopard's gonna die. I'm not actually even gonna get another shot into him, but it's no worries. We still did 4,800 damage in a very fast span, just because we were able to utilize HESH very effectively, and most importantly, use our teams as the targets, using their HP instead of my HP throughout most of this battle. So that was a pretty good game. Now, for this third game, we are going to be on Black Goldville, and I really like how I played this game. Firstly, what I'm going to mention is that my team's going town. I noticed that right at the very start, and I'm not going to go caves. I usually like to go towards the cave side of the map if I can help it, but because it's evident that my team is not going to support me there, it would be a very bad idea for me to commit to that flank fully. So I'm going to go up to this middle position and try and get some early spots onto the enemy team, and I find 3 of their heavy tanks going to town. What you're going to notice, though, is I do not spot their tank destroyers, which is immediately popping a light bulb into my head that perhaps these tank destroyers are either sniping in spawn or they've moved up towards the top end of the map, and I want to make sure those tank destroyers don't get free reign on me. Now, I get spotted here pulling out, and I know that it must be the Vickers Light spotting me in this situation, and I figured he'd be in the bush in front of me. I didn't think he would actually be poking out so far, but unfortunately I take a shot there. I was correct in assuming he'd be there, and now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to just push up onto the Vickers. That would be a bad idea. They still have 3 unspotted tank destroyers. I'm going to take the long route and start heading towards the caves. That way I can spot the enemy tank destroyers and have a relatively decent amount of cover to be behind. And just as I was predicting, I do in fact spot up the E3 and the 183 moving up towards the caves, which is why it was good of me not to just full commit through the mid. Now, I have a choice here. I could run away towards town and just completely avoid these tank destroyers, or as I noticed the ISA is pulling up towards me, I can retake the caves and make these tank destroyers useless here, because in this situation, what would happen is, if I ran away, the IS-8 would also run away. And what happens there is these tank destroyers will have free reign of the top side of the map, and they will just farm our heavy tanks. And this E3, because he's remained spotted, he's not going to have a very good game. He's already a one-shot, and this 183 is now distracted by me, which means In this situation, we've effectively stopped these tank destroyers from being aggressive on our team in town, which could have really changed the game. Now, what I did here is I backed all the way up to get a low profile. That way I can scoot around this hill without getting spotted by the 183. I could see he would likely be pre-aiming the gap where I was last spotted. If I poke on the left side fast enough, it's very unlikely that he will be pre-aiming that corner, which I was correct in assuming. I'm just going to snap a HESH shot into his turret and pull back. Now, what we got here is the IS-8 has started shooting this 183, and the 183 is distracted, and now is my opportunity to push up onto this 183. I'm going to ignore this Vickers for now. I'm not too concerned about him. The 183 is a priority target. Our IS-8 is focusing him, and so should I. We should delete his gun. He has the most dangerous gun in the game, after all. And now I'm just going to ignore the 183. I can see that IS-8 is nearly reloaded, and he's going to kill that 183. And this E3, I think, didn't realize I was looking this direction, so I get the kill on him real fast. And now what me and this IS-8 have effectively done is pretty much we've deleted these two tank destroyers up at the top side of the map, and I'm just going to use my HESH against this Vickers Light. And with the brand new branch of British light tanks in the game, playing the 4202 is actually a lot of fun because you can bully these tanks with HESH so easily. I mean, I'm going to do like 4 shots to this Vickers, and he's already a 1-shot, and he's dead now thank you to our IS-8. And what I just wanted to highlight most of all about this game in particular was me and this IS-8 retaking map control in this situation. If you would notice these tank destroyers, and if we had not gone up towards the caves and aggressed and taken out these tank destroyers, what would have happened is these tank destroyers would have just pushed around behind my team, and we would have died so fast. And in fact, I'm pretty positive we would have lost this game if I had just run away when I saw those tank destroyers. However, I knew the importance of maintaining map control. I knew the importance of not, letting these tanks pull around behind us. Even if I didn't do much damage in that situation, I still would have been effective by keeping their team distracted, and that makes all the difference. So sometimes a good play doesn't necessarily mean you're dealing a ton of damage. It means you're just using your tank in an effective position. And I think that's a good lesson to know with not just the 4202, but with any tank in general. If you can help maintain map control, you'll win a lot more games that way. Now, you're not always going to get those situations, and thank you to this IS-8, who is actually a really great support vehicle in this game. We were able to retake map control and take out 3 vehicles pretty much by ourselves with the help of our team from town, and that made all the difference in this game. Now I'm just going to pick up the one more shot and just aiming for a track shot on this E100, and he's going to go down pretty fast. So that was a pretty fast game, almost 4,900 damage. It seemed pretty easy, but there was one major decision that I think really made the difference in this battle, and something I wanted to highlight. Now, we have a bonus game today. As you remember, I'm actually showing you 4 games. This isn't a consecutive game, but I think this is a good game to show how aggressive you can be in the 422 if you read the enemy's lineup correctly. So, for this game, we are going to be on Alpenstat, and I'm just going to go towards this middle position where the Vickers is headed to get some early spots off. And the reason I'm doing that is I don't like committing to the full right corner, because if you do not get enough support on that side, and if the enemy team push on you, you have to take this really long route to run away through spawn, and if they have their team pre-aiming you, you're going to lose a ton of HP, which is why I generally like to take this bush where the Vickers is. You can get good spots up, and you can run away in a fairly secure manner. Now, the encounter cap goes off, so that means their team is split up. The Batjack gets spotted, and the Chieftain gets spotted, which tells me whatever they have on encounter cap is very likely by himself. And the AMX-50B gets spotted up. I realize, okay, he has to be isolated. I hear him shoot once. I hear him shoot a second time. He cannot have more than 1 shot in the clip, so I'm just going to be very aggressive on this 50B. Really pushing onto him and spamming HESH ammunition straight into his turret. Once again, utilizing the HESH and knowing how effective this HESH ammunition can be can make a difference. I'm going to put one more shot on this 50B, and then I'm just going to pull around the corner. I don't want to risk taking an unnecessary shot in this situation, but just in a matter of seconds, I was able to make that AMX-50B practically useless. He's on 1,000 HP, so I just waited for my camouflage to reset, and now I'm going to prioritize this E75, who I can see is very much isolated. I'm going to put a track shot into him, and then I'm just going to start pushing up on this E75. If you keep an eye on the minimap, you'll see the enemy team is pushing very hardcore onto our Vickers, and right now I just need to take out these 2 heavy tanks. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to prioritize the AMX-50B over the E75, because to me, he's a more dangerous target, and I knew the E75 was going to die. He wasn't the most amazing player. I'm going to put a shot into this AMX-50B and wait for him to get distracted before pulling out once again and getting the kill on him. Now, it's a pretty straightforward play, but I was able to read that the enemy team was split, and I was able to read that the majority of their team was actually headed towards the medium side of the map, which means whatever tanks they had in town and on the encounter cap were isolated, and I was able to use that information and push in very aggressively. And like I say, you can play the 4-2-2 aggressively, just try to avoid situations where you're in a disadvantage 1 versus 2 where you're having to do an intense brawl. But if you can use your team and push aggressively, you're going to get a lot of damage. And I dealt over 3,000 damage very quickly, and I'm actually going to get a pretty good farm game. Just going to keep using that HESH, farming this T92, and he's not going to survive very long. He ran into a rock, most unfortunately for him, so he is no longer in this game. And now I'm just going to keep pushing straight in, and I'm going to pretty much shoot HESH nonstop for the rest of this battle. I'm going to prioritize the 4-2-2 here, just because he has the DPM over the Batchat, and I would just rather take out his gun first before chasing down the Batchat. I'm going to put 420 into his turret, and I'm going to back all the way around him, and you're going to see a Maxwell crew skill, 550 HESH, and if you don't have the Maxwell crew skill, which is a light tank crew skill, you need to get it. It is one of the most effective crew skills you can ever have, in my opinion. It is the #1 crew skill I recommend everyone get, so definitely get that. I'm going to put one more shot into this Batchat, and then I'm going to fluff my kill shot and become frustrated at my aiming skills because I should have just stopped and aimed. So while I do that, let's just recap real quick what the 4-2-2 does well, and that is farming damage with HESH ammunition, and this is why you need to use the HESH. I shot almost entirely HESH this game and did well over 6,000 damage. And you can play the 4-2-2 aggressively, but you never want to be a prioritized target if you can help it. Always use your team. It's not a great brawling vehicle. A 140 and a 62 is much better at brawling than a 4-2-2 just because of the armor profile and the subsequent lack of heat rounds. Now, if you can do that, it is a very positional tank, and if you can find out how to position your tank based on reading the enemy's lineup, seeing where they're positioning themselves, you can get a lot of amazing damage games in this vehicle. And this is pretty much what my entire session of playing the 4-2-2 this afternoon was like. I averaged well over 4K over 20 games. Anyone can do that. You just have to be logical in your approach of playing the 4-2-2. You're not a YOLO medium. You're a great support medium, and you need to know that when you're playing this vehicle. So I hope this video was helpful for everyone. Please feel free to like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe if you want to see some more awesome content. You guys are awesome, and I hope you all have an amazing day.
On the mix.